And we begin with continuing coverage of the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. Speaking in front of the General Assembly today are leaders of roughly 24 countries. But the real business at the UN headquarters is what's taking place in smaller meetings throughout the week. One-on-ones or group meetings among diplomats to hash out some of the most pressing international crises. To begin with, an Iranian nuclear deal may be back on the table. While President Obama and newly elected Iranian President Hassan Rouhani didn't end up meeting face-to-face, Secretary of State John Kerry is scheduled to meet with his Iranian counterpart on Thursday for further talks over Iran's nuclear program. Elsewhere, the UN Security Council is busy considering a resolution on Syria's chemical weapons, also keeping John Kerry busy, this time with Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, who helped author the deal. So what might come out of all of this? Well, joining me now from New York for the latest on the happenings at the UN General Assembly, RT's Anastasia Churkina. Anastasia, welcome. Let's start by talking about Iran. Much hyped meeting between President Obama and President Hassan Rouhani never went down, but President Obama did talk about dispatching John Kerry to work on an Iranian deal. Kerry will meet with his Iranian counterpart tomorrow. What can we expect here? This deal proved elusive with Ahmadinejad. What changes with Rouhani on board now?
Well, Sam, what exactly changes I think we will see tomorrow when this meeting happens on Thursday. What we're talking about specifically is going to be a meeting of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, plus Germany, plus Iran, to discuss the situation around Tehran's uranium enrichment program. This will be the first time a U.S. Secretary of State meets with the Iranian foreign minister, which is certainly seen as a big step forward, as opposed to, if Obama and Rouhani did meet, that would have been the first meeting between leaders of these two countries in over 30 years. So definitely talks are going to happen tomorrow. We'll see what comes out of them. But to just understand better what has really improved, we have been hearing speeches from Obama and the Iranian president talking about basically being ready for more dialogue. Iran in particular, the new president has said that Iran is not interested in building up tensions between the U.S. and Tehran. It's certainly willing to get rid of and remove any concerns around its uranium enrichment program, and has said that basically nuclear weapons don't have a place in Iran's political doctrine. And we have seen from Obama say that he has kept the door for diplomacy open for Iran to step through. So we'll see if that actually, tomorrow we might see the first signs of that take place.
Yeah, let's move on to Syria here. John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov held a bilateral meeting last night. A resolution they've worked on is now being considered in the UN Security Council. What hurdles are still in the way of passage, and what sort of time frame might we be looking at here?
Well, Sam, in terms of the hurdles, certainly the major topic of disagreement remains the potential use of force. As we know, of course, Russia and the U.S. have worked out a deal that Syria would proceed to hand over its chemical weapons under international control. So now the Security Council is working on putting that in a document that they could vote on to ensure that actually happens. We're still waiting for that to take place. We do know the Security Council is working around the clock on this. There have been some reports that some document might have been agreed upon. However, there's been no confirmation or official statements made by the actual diplomats working on this document. Yesterday, when Lavrov and Kerry met, Lavrov said that there was, in fact, a productive dialogue. They're on the same page to move forward, meaning sticking with the agreements for a political transition that was agreed on in Geneva earlier for all parties to agree on a political solution. So far, it's hard to say what the timeline on this issue is going to be. We are literally expecting developments any minute and any day.
Let's move on to economics here. In his speech yesterday, President Obama mentioned the financial crisis that the world is emerging from. Now, the European Union has been sort of the epicenter of this financial shock since 2008. We've seen austerity put in place with, in some areas, pretty disastrous results. We've seen suicide rates spike. Was there anything, and the European Union actually addressed the General Assembly today, was there anything in that speech that addressed these ongoing economic hardships?
Yes, Sam, that is definitely the case. Surprisingly, with all these hardships going on, much of the speech made by the EU president was concentrated on Syria, but he did talk about the attempts to rebuild the economy. Certainly, a lot of it were very generic statements. He did say that we're putting our house back in order after the crisis. It's obviously a slow process that is going to take time. He did try to reassure, I guess, the international community that a long-term plan for jobs should make the situation better. But obviously, if we look at the real numbers on the ground in countries, economies that were hit the hardest, like Spain, for example, where over a quarter of the population is unemployed, it certainly seems like bigger words than actual results at this point. But this was addressed, and the president of the EU did say that all but 1 out of 28 countries should see growth in the time to come.
Right. Meanwhile, the United States here is 2.5 years into our own austerity economics as well. This UNGA comes a few weeks after President Obama has been trying to lobby support from the American people for military strikes in Syria. There's a new CBS New York Times poll out that shows that a plurality of Americans now disapprove of President Obama's foreign policy, 49% disapproving to just 40%. And those disapproval ratings have grown since July of this year. What do you think is behind this growing disenchantment, and how might it hinder what President Obama is trying to do at the UN this week?
Well, Sam, you know, what's behind the growing disenchantment, I guess, is the issues, the foreign policy specific concerns that are now Americans are unhappy with, such as, interestingly, this poll goes specifically also into Iran and Syria, where Americans don't really have a lot of faith that these issues will be improved under Obama. And I guess the explanation for that would be that both the difficult relationship with Iran, the crisis with Syria have both been at a stall, so people are questioning whether or not the approaches that are being taken right now are going to be able to help come up with some solution. And there are some also interesting numbers in that poll that only 22% of Americans expect any kind of improvement with Iran. And when it comes to Syria, of course, we do know that when the military option was being weighed, a huge majority of Americans opposed this. They continue to do this, and largely because many people are just afraid of a constant military option kind of state of mind and potential warfare.
Mm-hmm. That was RT's Anastasia Churkina from New York City with updates on the UN General Assembly.